NIMBYism and YIMBYism. I think, in general, the term NIMBY was what was more popularly known years ago, and so on Divisadero, I started my political activism by pushing back against a Chase Bank that displaced 2 local businesses, and the cheese shop and the truffle shop, and it collapsed 3 into one, and 3 spaces into one for this behemoth bank that we didn't need. And there's one 8 blocks away. There's one 12 blocks away. They tanked our economy. Why is it that we're rolling out the carpet for these guys and not having community input into this? And then I was working with someone on that project, and he had actually helped save the theater at the Harding Theater next to the Independent at 616 Diviz from being bulldozed. And there was all this talk about him being a NIMBY because he had pushed back against the condo project that the developer wanted. And I thought, it's important for us to say no to things that we don't want to see, but it's really important for us to actually be a galvanizing force in saying what kind of development we do want. And so that's why I started Neighbors Developing Divisadero, and the first focus was on, like, what do we want to see happen at 616 Divisadero with the Harding Theater? What do we say yes to? And so when I think about the concept of NIMBY to YIMBY, NIMBYism can start with like a Rachel Carson kind of thing of we're saying no, not in our backyard, to pesticides. She did Silent Spring, of people saying no to nuclear power plants. And if you're saying no to something that's wrong, like it's actually displacing, it's exclusive, then it's pretty easy to flip it and find what your righteous yes is on that, because you can say, I say yes to, local culture and community empowerment and healthy soil and healthy air and all that. But then there's NIMBYism that is, another piece of it, which is this knee-jerk reaction to things. And so you get people saying, I don't want anything to change at all, and they're just flat out against anything. Or you get people who have been fighting back against Booker T. Washington Community Service Center. They've been trying to do the foster housing and all that. And so it's hard to find a yes to that, except, greed or selfishness or, these ideas of who is and who isn't a good neighbor and exclusiveness. So then, to me, YIMBYism is like this no and, because a lot of times we get activated by saying no to something, and then we figure out what it is we want to say yes and push for. So I guess I just wanted to, say that to you guys and hear, get some feedback from you about how you think this term is and, how you use it personally.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, for NIMBY, it typically is, I think, typically is used in homeless services around any time a homeless program is going to go into a neighborhood. And so whether it's a shelter or, or permanent housing like Booker T. Washington or anything else. And so, and that comes from a class-based fear against, that's very race-based usually, that is, people don't want poor people in their presence, and make a lot of assumptions about what that's going to mean for them. And so I think like one of the classic examples is the shelter in the Bayview, where there was a lot of resistance to the shelter going in there from the kind of newer people who had moved into the neighborhood, and then tons of support from long-term African American community members, because basically who was ending up, in the shelter, and the Bayview has a very large population of homeless people there that are, Bayview natives displaced, mostly elder African American men, and they're sitting up all night in chairs, and their legs are swelling. They have to call the ambulance all the time, and we're basically torturing them as a matter of public policy. So trying to get a shelter open up in their neighborhood, which has the largest homeless population in the city. Because
the Bayview has the largest homeless population.
Yeah, I mean, it goes Tenderloin, Bayview goes back and forth, but, the last count it was Bayview. But, so it's, because, contrary to popular myths, homeless people stay close to their communities, like all poor people do. So native San Franciscans, you're going to see a lot more extremely low-income native San Franciscans than higher-income folks. So.
Oh yeah, come on in. Work
So-
around that, no worries.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Um, so,
Thank you.
we had like, so the resistance to it was really interesting in that they said, their advertising against the shelter was, Save King Pool. And it was this idea that having, of course, more homeless people in the neighborhood was somehow gonna screw up the pool, and they had pictures of kids swimming in the pool, and it ended up really striking a chord with a lot of people because, of course, the last place to be desegregated was pools. And we're talking about all African American people who would be staying at that shelters. I mean, it's like if you look at who's at Mother Brown sitting up in chairs, it's 97% African American. So it's like, okay, and then, back in the day when desegregation happened, the pools, it was like if a black person got in the pool, they drained the whole pool and kick everybody out. It was like this whole thing. So it was just like, it's a really hot button issue. But anyway, so it just
Did that work against the anti?
Well, yeah, it was just like,
Because-
what are you guys
yeah,
thinking? You're
yeah.
so clueless. So,
Right.
yeah, so it's just, and it's very much, like these things always are, is very much along class and race lines.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And then when you think about what you want to say yes to right now, I mean, obviously the flip side is to create shelters
Right.
for people. And is there, riff off of that for a second, if you will, like what kind of things are you really
Yeah.
wanting to promote right now?
well, we've got, our big thing that we're pushing right now, actually, I've got the, and the full report's available online, but, we're trying to, we have a 5-year roadmap to end family homelessness, and this lays out exactly, how it could be done in San Francisco. And so part of it is that the nonprofit housing developments that are going up on city-owned and previously owned lands, that a percentage of those units go towards homeless people, and we have a call for about 375 additional units going in there. About 30% of those developments, which, are, if not without a subsidy, are totally out of reach to homeless people. And then trying to get, a bunch of other stuff is in there around turnover units and how we prioritize homeless people and prevention, keeping people in their homes.
Mm-hmm.
We have about, less than half of people having access to legal counsel, and that's why they're getting displaced, because the landlords are lawyering up big time. So we have a situation where a very large, thousands of people moving out of their places unnecessarily, and then thousands of people losing them because they don't have, even though we have tenant rights, we don't have right to counsel for tenants yet. So which we're fighting for. And it is a problem because the tenants are standing on their own against these high-priced attorneys, and they're going to settlement conference, and they're being forced to take a payment and move out of their place. They're not able to take it to trial because they don't have an attorney to take them to trial, and they have no negotiating power.
Mm-hmm.
So that's happening, obviously, to thousands of people.
Just
so
a quick question about that,
so part of that is the yes part is like, yes,
Yeah.
let's keep people in their homes and let's
Yeah.
not displace. Yeah.
And a question that I've been having about that is, Mark Leno at the state level was just trying to strengthen Ellis Act eviction law so that it would prevent some of these displacements. But is there a way to do something at the city level where you're saying we're gonna not? I guess they can't put a moratorium on evictions, but is there a way to say if you want to evict someone that it has to go through this mediation process, or we add a step that could delay it or draw it out a little bit more? Have you heard about that?
So the state law that Ellis Act is contained in, as well as prevents us from having vacancy control. So that's one of the issues, and then that ends up really driving, that ends up being a big issue. And then it has some other stuff in there, so you can do OMIs and you can do some other things. But we do have, we can do the mediation piece in our public housing and our city-owned properties. And that's one of our recommendations, actually, is to do exactly that and have a mediation process earlier, especially for like non-payment of rent and stuff like that. We can do a lot more tenant rights, public education, and stuff like that for the broader people. We really want a door-to-door campaign that's really extensive in multiple languages. Like I said, beefing up the right to counsel, and You know, there's some other protections we can put in for tenants, but it's got to be specific around, you know, around specific populations that don't violate the state law.
Mhm.
And so, for example, we put in provisions around senior and disabled people. We put in provisions, you know, so there's those kinds of things that can be done. And there was, out of the tenants convention, there's like 5 different, you know, things. They tried the, you know, of course, tried the tax route, which is to, you know, charge people who were doing
Right, Prop G.
the evictions, Prop G, and that didn't pass. And there was a lot of super dishonest information on the other side that ended up killing that, because it was actually really well written, like very targeted towards people who were doing the speculation, the real estate speculation. Yeah, it was really well written. But like, I did some phone calling and you know, quite a few nights, and I couldn't believe, like, people believed all this stuff that just wasn't true.
Mhm.
Because of all the stuff that had been mailed to them. Yeah. So, and the commercials. There's a lot of commercials.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so you want to take it away a little bit, talking about NIMBY and YIMBY and your-
Yeah, sure. So as far as for eviction moratorium, like, yeah, we couldn't do anything like at the Board of Supervisors, but in Philadelphia when we had a sheriff's sale moratorium, and that was something that the courts did. Like, the court can always decide to not take cases. And then also, like, when people talk about eviction moratorium now, they talk about pressuring the sheriff.
Mhm.
That's what, also during the eviction crisis in Baltimore, the sheriff's office was like, okay, we're gonna wait 365 days between people losing their case in ejectment and actually evicting them.
They can't, our sheriff can't do that. They have a set amount of time they can wait. I don't
Yeah.
think they can delay it more than 7 days by law.
Oh, really? Because
Yeah.
in Philadelphia also, the sheriff was, you know, he got in trouble because he was like dragging his feet more and more and more.
Uh-huh.
Like because the bank would be like, okay, we won the house, and the sheriff's like, yeah, I'll schedule you. Oh, why don't you call back later? You know what I mean? Just like, so that's where that focus would be, especially if it was, you know, it would have to be like short term. It wouldn't be a law. It would be like outside the law. But I think that's
I heard
interesting.
about you know, back when Mayor Lee was an activist in the International Hotel,
Yeah.
the sheriff at the time
Right.
actually went to jail.
Right, refused to do it.
But McCready's not going to go to jail.
Right.
He's not willing to do that. But and you're saying it's a 7-day.
I think it's
a
7 to
law,
14 days or something.
and
There's only a
so
certain amount of
there's
time.
nothing
He's
we can
totally
do.
willing to delay.
Yeah.
He's cool with it. Like,
Yeah.
he'll do it up until the point that he can, but, and most of the times, like, if we're having actions around evictions, then we're always coordinating with the sheriff already.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of work being done on this, obviously. I mean, people know what the fuck is up with it, for sure.
Yeah.
So, and all the different strategies, yeah.
But we just haven't been able to figure out a way to stop it yet. Stop
Well,
the
we
tide.
haven't, you know, yeah, I mean, I think we haven't done what we're supposed to do altogether. Like, we haven't fully funded right to counsel, we haven't made
Right.
sure that everyone has access to back grant, we haven't done these, you know, publicly funded mass public education campaigns, we haven't done the, you know, we didn't pass Prop G, we didn't, you know, we need to pass another rent control law that is not excluding the post-1979 that goes all the way up to developments to date, so that they're also under rent control. We need to stop excluding single-family homes from rent control. We need to, you know,
Is
all
it
that
something we
stuff.
can do at the
Those are all
city
things we
level?
can do at the city level, but it's gotta be
To
passed by,
extend?
by voters.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's like a lot more stuff to be done, for
Mm-hmm.
sure. But it's gotta get passed, and it's gotta, yeah.
Yeah, and we haven't made enough room for new people coming in. Like, that was totally my impulse doing this, which is that, like San Francisco has done a lot. You know, like, there's a lot more tenant protections here than, you know, anywhere. But
Well,
if it's
not quite, but.
in the United States,
Yeah, we don't have more. I don't think we have more. I mean, East Palo Alto's got pretty good,
Oh, okay.
pretty good tenant protections.
certainly better than I've ever seen, like, anywhere on the East
Uh,
Coast.
Yeah.
What are the other models you'd say?
Yeah.
Well,
Palo Alto?
City of LA is not too bad. Seattle's got some strong. I mean, there's a bunch, but yeah. So
Mhm.
it's
But they don't have rent control in Seattle yet.
they don't, but they've got pretty decent
Like
eviction
lawyer
control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, everybody should definitely lawyer up. I mean, that's obvious. Anyway, but yeah, but there's, I mean, if you like actually just have 10 times as many people as want to live here, you know, laws can only do so much. So that was my, you know, that's my yes in my backyard thing. You know what I mean? Like, when we have an empty lot, wasting it on 4 stories is a crime, you know? or wasting it on nothing.
Right, or wasting on high-end developments that are gonna sit empty because nobody's actually living in them.
That's-
which is a huge number of them.
That's not true. It's
So-
only 2.5% of them.
Of
You
the-
say 2.5%?
Yeah.
Of
Where do you
the
get that?
total number of units, because it's of the,
Spur.
of the newly constructed, like, high-end
Yeah.
stuff, it's super high. So
Mm.
the actual number of units.
It's not like that 48 Hills article that said
Uh-huh.
40%. Like even in the article, it's after it reports 40%, it says 40% is the number of units where the owner has another address listed. So all that means is that 40% of the units are owned by someone that owns more than one property, which is you have no idea whether they're being rented out, whether they're owned by a family member, whether the person owns two properties because they bought this one before selling the other one. There's no way to know. And even in the article, they were like, we actually have no idea these things could all be rented out full time.
Yeah, but I know there's, there's like, if you talk to high-end interior decorators, if you talk to people living in a lot of these towers and stuff like that, like, a lot. I mean, we're talking like more than half of the units are used as vacation rentals in a lot of the big towers and stuff. Cause like, I have a friend that's a florist that does all this stuff and she's like, she can't believe it, like how, like fully half the units are, in these tall towers that are like the high-end ones that are being used for vacation. Cause the thing is that what happens is that
Investments.
people,
Yeah.
like a lot of people in China right now are buying, because of the economic turn in China. So a lot of the very affluent Chinese, a lot of, they're buying them as investments, and even though they're not gonna use them, they're gonna have this property that's gonna stay because we have a strong real estate market, and then later you can sell them hopefully for more money, or it's a way to just like sink your money that that you can just hold it. So it's happening a lot, and regardless though, the percentage of, when you look at what units are needed in San Francisco, compared to the population, we're totally overbuilding on the high end and we're underbuilding on the low end.
Well, if
And
we were
so-
overbuilding on the high end, then that would mean that, that property managers, renter, that they wouldn't be able to fill the units, which isn't
No, they
true.
are because of what people are buying them for investment purposes. That's
Well,
the point.
right, which means we're
Because it
not
doesn't, it would,
overbuilding.
yeah, I mean, that concept would work if, we have a situation where, like, if you're gonna project out maybe like 25, 30 years and you're overdoing, and then eventually the prices are gonna drop, that might work, but we have a finite market in San Francisco, and so it's, once we lose something to the high end, it's, then, and for the developers, all they gotta do is put in some Viking stoves, and they pay a little bit more money, and you talk to these
Right.
developers, and they're like, I can just put in an extra $2,000 per unit, basically, or $4,000 per unit, call it high end and sell it for, shitloads more money. And so when you look at, it's all laid out in the housing element, what percentage of units we need for each income category. And so, based on our population in
Those
San
are
Francisco.
minimums.
Yeah.
So also saying, oh, we have too many, it doesn't make sense. Like the state is like, you have to build at least at this level. And
Right,
so
but
there
then
is no
building
over.
more, overproducing in one category means underproducing in another.
Right, yeah,
now.
because the low end is totally underproduced. I mean, there's no question about it, obviously. That's why we
Yeah.
have so many people when you walk around this
Yeah.
neighborhood that are out on the streets, obviously. There's not enough housing that people can afford. And so when we're building, and then, when we're not, and, and that's where, it would have been great, with Jane Kim's piece to be binding if the mayor hadn't ended up killing it, is that we have, a really true housing balance where the units that are developed have to be developed for the appropriate income level of the people who need them in San Francisco. And that's not what we're doing. We're doing the flip. We're just letting the
Yeah.
developers develop a whole bunch of high-end stuff.
And we're also
And-
losing affordable units to richer people who bid up the prices, right? So
When they
something-
become available.
Right, so
Yeah.
something, if somebody leaves rent control, they whatever, move for some reason, any old reason, then the next people that come in, if they're high income, they pay more for an old unit.
Right.
Right, so that's,
Which is why you gotta help the displacement.
yeah, that
So,
definitely
and
helps.
that's- yeah.
And also provide more expensive units for those people to move into. Like, if there were more, we can't compete with higher income people, which
Yeah,
is
but
why
I
the
think
shortage
you're,
is so
I think
disastrous.
that you're like, yeah, but you're, the high income units that are being developed, those
Yeah.
brand new ones with the big views and the towers, those people are not gonna be moving into a flat in the Mission, let me tell you.
No, but the
So
stuff
they're
like
not
at-
even close to be moving into a flat in the Mission.
No,
And
no,
they're-
but
the
but
income disparity, like we're talking about multimillionaires versus, you know, a tech worker earning $100K a year.
Mhm.
It's a very
But
different,
we're not even
different
building
situation.
stuff for the tech workers.
Right, that's what I said.
So
We're building
maybe-
it all
yeah,
for the high
so
end.
No,
the-
we're not.
The
We
luxury.
are.
So stuff like the
we have
Maximus
to stop
process.
with the luxury.
The Maximus project, that would be for tech workers. Vita, that's filled with tech workers. There's the
You know,
like the
building off of that.
Infinity is one thing,
Uh-huh.
but
Right.
or the condos, those 38 condos on Divisadero, that would have been for tech workers. Like all, or those 277.
Well, I think you're kind of loosely, I mean, I was defining it for specific income.
so
Are
what?
you
like
talking about
140?
100,000?
No, for the new, for the
80,000
new, I mean, if you think about it,
year.
so if it's a brand new unit that's for sale, if you're talking about sale ones, you're talking about something that's gonna sell for, you know, I mean, our lowest end real estate at this point on sales, I mean, there's, you know, very little under $1 million at this point. So typically you pay 10% down and you're paying 10% mortgage, you're talking about someone that can afford, you know, a shitload of money every month, it's like
Mhm.
10,000, you know, $10,000 mortgage every month. So it's just, there's not for like working class people, that's obviously not gonna be
Yeah.
achievable. And
Yeah.
the, you know, so,
The question that I have is, you know, when we talk about this idea of the monster and the mission,
Mhm.
my thought was, well, would it be a monster if it were 100% affordable or if it was 50% affordable? Because there's this idea that it's the largeness of it or the height of
Uh-huh.
it is an issue, and I actually don't see that as an issue if we're building on BART areas.
Uh-huh.
That if it's affordable, I don't think it would be called a monster. I think it's being called
well,
a,
the
do
the
you know
pictures
what I
are pretty
mean?
dramatic though, I gotta say, like, I think it would really affect, but if the developers were doing that at 100% affordable, the
Mhm.
lot across the street's gonna be 100% affordable, nobody's protesting that,
Mhm.
and that'll be going up pretty high.
Right.
So it's 1650, so yes, it was 100% affordable. Of course, for affordable for us is 0 to 30% AMI. It's not 120% AMI.
Do you
So-
like the idea
Well,
of there
even
being a
55.
stratification of, you know, thinking about the direct service workers,
Yeah.
nonprofit workers, teachers, first responders, city workers, tech workers?
Right.
Like,
I mean, it should
because
be-
affordable housing is 30% of your income for rent, and that can be from people making, you know, $20,000 a year to $120,000 in the same building, and it's all affordable because you need to have that diversity of incomes in order to make it work, right?
Uh-huh.
Is that
Well, you can, yeah. I mean, basically, the way they make the homeless units work is you always have to have an operating subsidy. Like, there's no homeless people really that are going to be able to move into BMRs or any of these other places unless
Right.
there's a subsidy attached to it. So, but yeah, so if they did it 100% affordable and they had it, and for us, like the guideline is, you know, it should be 30 to 40%. You know, especially if it's, you know, city owned or, you know, property, 30 to 40%, you know, affordable to homeless people.
Mhm.
And the city's got enough money to subsidize to make that work, and it's a lot cheaper than keeping people homeless. They spend a lot more money keeping people homeless, so, it ends up only being like, you know, $8,000 a year in the affordable housing
Oh,
units for the
interesting.
subsidies. It's not that expensive, so.
8,000 per year per person, as opposed to
per
I
household.
was looking at something today that was saying, you know, the hardest they called it hardcore homeless, the $100,000 a year could be how much is spent for services like at a high end, you know, and I bet it's more around
Well, if
40,000.
you're currently homeless,
Yeah.
then your cost is gonna be a lot higher because human beings aren't meant to live outside. So
Yeah.
you're gonna be hitting the ER all the time, your infections are gonna turn into loss of limbs, you're gonna have like all these different things. The sleep deprivation alone, diabetes, heart disease, you know, cognitive disorders, like all this stuff just gets super compounded when you
Mhm.
suffer from sleep deprivation for long periods of time. Of course, your mental health deteriorates, you know, everything. So
Right.
that ends up being very costly. So yeah, we end up spending a lot more money. So that's where all that, like every study that's ever been done shows it's much cheaper just to house people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you say right now there's I saw an estimate at the state level, and I think it was something around 40,000 per person per year. But do you have
For the services?
Yeah.
You know,
do you have a ballpark?
I think it depends on, for people who are in housing.
Out of housing.
Oh, out of housing.
Yeah. Like how much are we, like, is there some kind of figure that they're using right now for
the
San
figure
Francisco?
for San Francisco is more closer to 100,000.
Wow. Okay.
That it ends up costing in medical health. And sorry, I was confused with if you were asking, like, once somebody was in housing, what would the cost of support services be?
And then
that
what
you
is
know, there's
that?
there's a small portion of homeless people who need, that need intensive supportive housing, and then the rest of the population doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just an economic issue. And then, for them, typically, I think in buildings, let's say a 40-unit building, maybe you have three support service staff or something like that. The typical ratio is like 1 to 15 if they're intensive and intensively needy, but sometimes, because sometimes it goes higher than that.
So something that I'm personally excited about and have been for a while is the idea of I know you are, about additional dwelling units in backyards and how that can be part of the solution, and also interim housing villages. Maybe I shouldn't speak for you. I thought you might be excited about that, but Katie Tang has proposed to be able to do this in backyards. And my thought was this, and this is something that, I think about in relation to Balboa Reservoir as well. There could be some type of showcase there for additional dwelling units, tiny houses. And we could have, somewhere between, 20 to 40 in this one area of land that's currently not being utilized, and have people live there. And I mean, you could even target that towards, someone who has a kid who's in SFUSD school or veterans or whatnot. But people are living in these homes, and we figure out, there's 5 to 10 of these models of these houses that are actually really good design, and people have tested them out and they work really well. So then what the city could do is say, hey, homeowners, we're going to do a survey and find out who across the city has space in their backyard for one of these things. If you choose one of these 5 to 10 models, then we will provide the design is already there. We'll help actually with the construction, putting it up, and the financing for it if you rent it to someone in one of these work categories of teacher, nonprofit worker,
I don't think we
whatnot.
need laws to do that. We just have to legalize
at 30% of their income. No, but I think we actually need to move forward.
Oh, yeah.
I'm saying, like, we'll give you an incentive
I'll tell you what the incentive would
you
be.
rent to someone at 30% of income in one of these categories. So that's an idea that I've been floating around, and
But
tell
there
me
is
your thoughts.
huge planning barriers to being able to put a unit in your backyard.
Yeah.
How so?
Well,
It's
because you
against
need
the law.
you basically.
Well, I know that we're currently working on
They
changing
did
legislation.
I mean, that's what, David Chu did the legalize the unit thing, which was, kind of classic David Chu and kind of silly. But, you gotta, because you gotta, go through a process of making your unit legal still. And so most of those units don't meet code, and it's not like they're allowing, so it costs a buttload of money basically to, your door into your unit is,
Not regulation.
not regulation. Your
Yeah.
ceiling's too short. You got to dig down. You can't have a bathroom off the thing. You can't have a room off it. There's just like all this shit. So,
But
so
what
that
what if you identify certain designs that would work, that you could help
Right.
streamline the
and
process
then they would,
of?
but you would still have to have the change to the planning code, which is not,
Oh, yeah.
not to say it's not
Which-
doable,
no,
but you'd
we
have to
should-
change it.
I think we
Yeah.
should do
Yeah,
it.
no, definitely. Backyard units is a thing. So Grow SF, like that's kind of that's our subcommittee
Mhm.
on, neighborhood small development.
Mhm.
I can't wait, right, until backyard units are legalized. The barrier to backyard units is basically, speaking of NIMBYs, is neighbors, and I've been to meetings like in the Sunset.
Just recently around this?
This was like over a year ago actually, and it wasn't specifically about. It was really interesting. It was not specifically about backyard units, but lot coverage. A lot coverage fight broke out between these two ladies like each of them, you know, whatever, like almost 60. Like to look at them, they looked like they could have been the same person, you know, like could have been best friends, but they were like viciously at each other's throats. Because in most of the city, you can build on 55% of your lot, but in their area, there's an overlay that only allows 45%. And one of the ladies wanted to add an addition to her house, and the planning commission was there, or not the commission, sorry, the planning department employees were there, and she was like getting really frustrated. She's like, I don't understand, why do we have this overlay? Like everybody else in the city gets, you know, to build on 55%. I want to build on 55%. And her neighbor was like, no. She was like standing up for protecting backyard open space. And the first lady was like, but it's my backyard. And she's like, but I love open space. And she's like, yeah, but it's not, this isn't a park we're talking about. She's like, but I want to be able to look at your backyard. And the first lady was, so that's what we're dealing with. You know, like these backyard cottages, you're going to have a lot of neighbors that are like, no, I like to look out my window and see like a big backyard. Everybody's backyard is the same. And that's what's happening in Corona Heights too. People are like, I want to be able to look at other people's backyards. So
You know, one of the
Corona Heights
areas
was expanding. It wasn't expanding units. It was just making the same units bigger.
Yeah.
So it's a totally different thing.
And as we were
I don't
talking
think it's
about
totally
people
different.
getting older and wanting to stay in their homes, this idea of backyard units could be an isolation for that too.
No,
where
listen,
you could have a
I cannot
caregiver
wait.
Yeah.
living with you, which is
Yeah.
something that
And
we
I
should
think
be
you'll
thinking
have
about.
consensus on, definitely, among progressives that to want to do that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So.
So the backyard units is one area that I think, and especially in a place like Bayview, you know, because, you know, I was just visiting someone out there and they actually have this cottage-like thing in their backyard.
Yeah.
And, but they use it for storage. But just knowing that, you know, with what you're citing around the homeless population and people being in communities still, but not having access to housing, you know, this is also an opportunity for a design and construction boom too in San Francisco as an additional industry or a way to give people jobs through putting together these homes. So that it's a little bit of a connect the dots type of thing on how many things we can hit with that. But the other thing that I wanted to talk with you guys about is, you know, Greg Gottman. What a challenging personality. But he, you know, I came up with this idea too of these I called them transitional eco-villages, where, you know, I've worked on a shoestring budget. I've been in nonprofits since, you know, I was 22, and I can stretch $100,000 a long way. And I was just thinking, you know, if we had $100,000, we could set up this little, you know, I created this
With
rough
Freeland,
budget.
of course.
What was that?
I said with Freeland.
With Freeland, yeah, exactly. But, you know, you hire an intern that's at CIIS or something, you know, to help with group facilitation and support services for this group to figure out how to be self-governing. You hire someone part-time who's permaculture trained and can do some kind of horticulture therapy on site. And then you have 10 to 15 little dwellings, and so I've been looking up all these different types of dwellings that are there, and some of them are, you know, emergency structures. And, and I actually loved the idea of this dome, and I saw these ones that were woven and collapsible, and they had solar, and they could actually collect rainwater, and they were pretty affordable. And so I was thinking about this, and now, you know, Greg Gottman has put out another. I sent it to you guys and a link to it.
Yeah, I've seen it.
And
already,
and he's got the domes too, and you know, this idea of, you know, a shared space, but this is something that, you know, I rode my bike past I guess like 5th and Howard, or where was it? No, there was an overpass somewhere. I can't remember the exact location, but there's an encampment out in front, and there's about 15 people that are living out there with their tents. And I talked to those guys for a while, and I was just saying, you know, there's all this space back here under the highway. You know, what if we were to have these cool looking dome things, and we were to set up some, you know, some place, opportunity for you to grow. What do you think? Well, you would. But Phil Ting just passed something that, you know, made it easier for these different agencies statewide that have land that's not being utilized to be able to allow it to be used for housing. And so you would have to get their permission, but, you know, there are other spaces like this where you don't have to. His idea is like, oh, we need 100 people, you know, living in this. But you could have 15 to 20, and there's probably like we could find about 10 different locations right now where that
Yeah.
could happen.
Yeah.
And I really like that idea of let's
And just
scrap
do it
it.
self-governing
Let's be scrappy.
Yeah.
You know, and we can do a lot with a little bit of money.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and especially if you're saying you're diverting it from going to these, you know, other services that people are going to need because they're sleeping outside.
Right. Right.
Don't you think we could do a lot if we were given like to pilot doing this in like 3 different locations in San Francisco?
Fill in, happen. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we also, I mean, years ago we had a proposal and it got funded by HUD, and then it got, and then the port property like changed its mind. But, because we had the property identified, what is it to do for vehicularly housed people?
Yeah. Oh,
And
tell me
'cause
more about that.
So basically, I mean, it was, you know,
What was
like
this-
everything
where's
that
the
we
site?
do is all designed by homeless people themselves. It was one of the port properties. It was out by like where, Esprit used to be,
Uh-huh.
you know,
I'm trying. I'm thinking.
kind of, it's off of Third, like on the water, but one,
Is it still there? Available
what's
to
the
be used?
club that's there now? No, they ended up doing something else with it, kind of near the ramp.
Mhm.
So, and so they basically, you know, the people were living in their vehicles, designed the whole thing, and it was just like this self-governing thing and a place where you can park, and it had bathroom and shower amenities, and, you know, which is like, you know, kind of the core thing, but you'd have hookups, you could use them or not, and, you know, shared cooking space.
How many
So
people
really
were they
simple.
estimating?
I think, you know, I'd have to look at what the original proposal was, but I believe it was around 30.
Mhm.
So it wasn't like a huge site, but, and then people could stay there long term, and, you know, you grow some trees. But a lot of the folks, really, you know, for folks who are living in their vehicles, you know, they develop a lot of community, and they've, you know, they're not interested in living in residential hotels. They, you
Yeah.
know, this is like their last asset. There's a lot, I mean, it's all different kinds of people, working people and elderly and stuff like that, but, you know, they need to be, you know, location wise, where they need to be, and, yeah, so it was pretty cool, but,
Maybe you can send me
really lost the thing.
some info on
Yeah,
that. if
so
you can
long ago,
find that. Yeah.
I have it in one of the files in the archives, but,
Yeah.
but it was pretty fun.
And then
trying to
there's,
think
you
of
know,
some of the-
Balboa Reservoir right now,
Uh-huh.
and I know you've been focused on that area. Have you been going to meetings
CAC
there?
meetings?
Uh-huh.
No, we don't go to the CAC meetings. I mean, we'll probably start, because the city had those two, well, you were at least at
I was
the
at
first
one.
one.
Yeah, I was at both.
We went to the second one, that wasn't that long ago. And then now it's just CAC meetings to go to.
But we could right now
Marshall.
do what we're talking about. I mean,
Uh-huh.
if we had
Oh, in
$100,000, we could create a small
Uh-huh.
village there, and you could make it so that it was focused on kids, you know, and,
Right.
and their parents.
Yeah.
I think that would be a good starting point, because
Uh-huh.
I think most NIMBYs would be averse to saying,
Right.
oh, that makes me feel uncomfortable to say
That
no
is
to these
false.
kids.
And-
But we're talking about a spectrum. So if you're talking about
There's
just
lots of
anybody versus kids, you know, like parents
Oh.
with kids that are in SFUSD that got displaced, I think
They're
it's an
gonna be a lot
easier
more open
sell.
to
You know,
it.
it's an
Yeah.
easier sell for people, and it makes them feel a little guiltier about saying no to it. But if we're talking about trying it out with, you know, 20 families,
Right.
like, you could create that space. We could do that in 2 months. I mean,
Right.
I'm a quick actor, you know, you guys might be as well. If you have the resources,
Right.
and then you have to, of course, put some infrastructure in place and policy and guidelines.
Do you know people at the school? At the community
Which school?
college? At the community college?
At CCSF?
Yeah. Have you floated this with them?
I have been talking to people there, and there are some people that are receptive that are CCSF, and then there's a lot of pushback, of course, since, you know, Dianne Feinstein tried to develop on that site and had problems, and so we're going back to the 70s or 80s with that issue. But the way that I've come up with a plan for that is to focus on how do you support, this is something
that's
I've been
really
working
fun.
on, like how do you address the needs of CCSF in developing that space in a long-term way, but this is short-term.
No, but even in the short term, because one of the main things at those meetings
Yeah.
was people were like, we use that lot for parking. They really insisted they were
Right.
using it for parking.
Right, but we're talking about a small section.
Okay,
of it.
not even the whole thing.
Yeah, no, not the
Okay.
whole
Well,
thing.
you can incorporate parking into stuff anyway.
Yeah,
It's not that
yeah,
hard.
but
Yeah.
but we're talking about
That's
if
the
we're
whole
saying 20 families or
Yeah, that's
20
not that
little
many.
pods, there's a section there that we could try this out with and see how it works. I guess what you would have to do to move quick on something like that is the mayor or it was Mohammed Nuru of the DPW declared a crisis of houselessness recently, so they could move forward quickly with the navigation center on Mission. And so I guess you use that kind of approach, is that a houselessness crisis has been declared.
Right.
Could we move quickly on something like that? Because you would know the families, right? You would know 20 families that would probably want to participate in that, right?
Yeah, probably.
Like right off
Yeah.
the bat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not about even identifying who they are, but it's,
I mean, if it's a temporary location, I mean, I think the thing with the navigation center, and that's why, was to really make sure that there was an exit plan for people to be able to move out into, more dignified housing. And so that would be, that's always going to be our focus, is around the permanent solutions.
right.
And so, and the navigation center ended up being kind of like that, although it's super, super political. So pretty much all the resources in the city are just being funneled over to the navigation center. So there's been a little bit of creation of new resources, but the stabilization rooms, they just sucked up a lot of the stuff. So
What do you
people
think
before-
about
but yeah, so trying to create
Gottman's
new ones.
idea?
I mean, it's okay. It's totally illegal in the way he's doing it. He's saying that he's not going to allow people with mental illnesses there, like he's going to discriminate against
Yeah.
people with
What's the
disabilities.
point of that?
Yeah. It's just like,
It's like I want to help people,
So that-
but not
so
really
he's
people.
overstepping on that.
Only the 40% that
He's overstepping
are-
on that piece, right?
Yeah.
But we can agree that maybe we rein in certain areas, but the overall
Yeah, I think conceptually,
concept
if
is
he
good.
has it where he's identifying housing for people to move out into, because again, he's talking about temporary sites.
Yeah.
And so you really, I think the way to leverage something like this, and so we get the people off the street, which is huge.
Yeah.
There's the big benefit there, the healthcare, the stability, and other things can happen for people as they're stabilized. So I don't want to emphasize that, but it's also a way to use it as leverage for more stuff, because it's and I think that's what happened with the navigation center, is to say, all right, we're going to get these people off the streets, but it's such a small, we're not going to make that big a difference unless we have exits out into housing. So we're using it as a way to constantly pull people in. People get housing, they can move out, and then you can have somebody else move in. And it's it ends up forcing the city to do what they should have been doing all along, right? Because they want to, they have so much investment in the site, they want it to be successful. They want to see a decrease in the encampments in the surrounding areas. They have, there's just a lot of political investment in that thing. And so that was the concept to begin with, to be able to leverage that, that political focus to then have that long-term thing.
Very
'Cause,
positive
yeah.
thing was that I heard, because I talked to Bevan Dufty about it, and he told me that, while you're there, you get to streamline the process of applying for GA from it used to be, spread out over the course of a few meetings throughout, a months-long period, and now you can do it in 1 week.
Well,
Is
yeah,
that-
I mean, it's,
is that
he's
working?
gonna get, I mean, he's gonna get, that's been an interesting thing, because basically, all the bullshit that they put you through on GA to keep your housing and all this stuff is all going to the mayor's office now. So there's they're basically able to look at all the crap that GA is putting people through, and then they're able to call them on it and say, you guys should be doing this to people. So it actually ends up being more of a case-by-case basis. So as they're screwing people over, which they do all the time, then Bevan gets that printout, and he's able to call the director of HSA and say, hey, you're screwing this guy over, and then HSA reverses it and keeps them in the benefits.
Okay.
So it's
But is that work? Are they finding that to work though in this week-long
well,
period?
I'm hoping that it'll end up reforming the whole system, but I might be too hopeful. But they've been denying that they got a problem over there.
Of the whole thing to me was
Yeah.
that you could streamline GA in 1 week as opposed to.
I mean, I'm saying like this
carrying
because
it out over 6 months.
It's kind of streamlined.
That'd
but,
be interesting to get that feedback
Yeah.
about that. So, okay, one of the things that I just want to say really quick is this idea of San Francisco, does it have to be continuously reacting to the growth of industry that is happening down the peninsula in, the tech companies? And how is it that we create a better nexus between the creation of jobs and the creation of housing? And when I think, just to put this out there, thinking about, like I said, I pushed back against Chase Bank moving into my neighborhood, and it just seems like there's this big connection between Chase and the other banks tank the economy. They get to purchase all of this property, and then they start to invest in luxury housing. And so it's really the banks that are playing a big part in what we're having to deal with, as well as down the peninsula, this idea of we're just going to keep responding to creating the housing for the jobs that are being created down there without this connection to also having them responsible for creating housing. And so that's something that I feel like we should be talking about when we talk about the issues of housing development in San Francisco, is how do we make that connection? And I like that you guys do that.
Yes.
And then also, what role do the banks play in this? And I do feel like there's a big connection that we're not really discussing when we talk about a crisis. So I'm curious for what you guys would say about that.
Well, one thing that banks are not doing is, so we started doing a report to see where projects fall out of the pipeline. So they fall out after, they're abandoned after, there's a big spike after the planning application, which makes perfect sense, right? That's the whole point of planning, is that they take in projects and they're like, no, you don't understand. Like, this doesn't, match our guidelines. Mm-hmm. Then there's another big spike right after building permits are granted, which was sort of a surprise. And the reason for that, and that's mostly smaller projects, like 20 units and less, and the reason for that appears at this early stage in the research to be a financing problem. And I talked to a guy that works at a bank that finances those types of projects, like the small projects, as opposed to, 50, 100, or whatever more. And he said that, yeah, of course it's a financing problem. He said that until this year, his bank was the only one in San Francisco that was financing small projects like that. So they have a similar...
Do you know what his bank is? Or?
No, I can find out and I can tell you. I just forget.
One bank in San Francisco is responsible for the financing of...
Well, it's not that they're responsible. It's just that,
is investing in this
for those small things. Because when you... Weirdly enough, like this was true. When I worked at the bakery, I also noticed this, found out that this was true. So the owner of the bakery needed to borrow $1 million, and he was finding it impossible. Not because he wasn't a good bet, but because that's too much for your credit card, but it's too little, because most of the time banks are like, what, we're not even going to bother with such a small loan. And so that's what happens to these smaller projects too. So yeah, and he was saying that it took, so now there's 3 banks that are doing it, but it took a really long time because of the crash, right? That was an area where anybody that was investing in it was wiped out. And also still to this day, the banks don't want to give no recourse loans. So one thing that was popular before 2008 was to be okay, we'll loan you money to build 12 units. If somehow you go bankrupt or whatever, then the bank takes the property and you're off the hook. But banks don't want to do that anymore because they seized all these properties at a time when property values were falling. And so then they had to unload them at low prices, which is why I'm kind of crashes happen. They happen no matter what. And it's crazy to suppress the amount of units that are going to be available when units go on sale. All that stuff, once it was repossessed, went on sale. In West Oakland, Rick Holliday's first project went for like 2/3 of what he thought he was going to sell it for, because it opened during the crash.
But that has not been the case in San Francisco.
In San Francisco, well, when people were renting in like 2009, 2010, 2011, like that was a pretty good time, definitely relative to now, to like start a lease. It is
But
shorter
it was
here.
still way, even in those.
Yeah.
I mean, it went, it was 97 when the rent started going way beyond people's means.
Yeah.
So it goes back further than that. But it's, I mean, but the real estate market, is leveled off in San Francisco, but it's not gonna drop back down.
What are your thoughts
So-
about banks and financing, and do you put thought into that?
Well, I mean, for us, what we look at, I mean, they're definitely financing the anti-homeless measures in a big way, and all the financial institutions have been pretty much like big time.
Tell me
You
more
mean
about
the
that.
SIT-LI laws?
They're
Yeah, like
financing the
like
anti-homeless.
SIT-LI is an example. So the SIT-LI law that passed in San Francisco,
Wait, banks
was-
finance those?
yeah, financial industry. gets
Really?
work big time.
Why do they care?
Interesting.
Well,
I would expect big
They-
business, like big property owners, like Boston properties.
so
to do it.
the interest basically is that it's a wedge issue, and so it's to drive more conservatives to the polls. And so
Oh, I
in that
see.
case for SIT-LI, the reason that was on the ballot was to get Weiner elected, and so
That's very interesting.
yeah, so they put a lot of money behind SIT-LI as a way to get that vote in his district, which was the vote to override a mayoral veto, which of course the mayor's, aligned with, and has been for many administrations, aligned with big developers in this town. So, that's basically the deal, and the financial industry is behind that, so,
Interesting.
yeah.
And one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot, and Joseph Smook has written about this too. I talked with him about, how do we get pensions and unions to be investing in financing, and he says, oh, well, it's already happening.
Yeah, they already do.
And they're already doing it, but generally they're thinking about doing it because they want construction jobs, and they're not thinking about the
and
end
it's
use.
a safe bet.
But it is a safe bet, but what if we took it one step further and said that the unions were financing, and 50% of the homes that they create, or the units that they create, are going to union workers?
Right.
I mean, doesn't that seem like a no-brainer? Am I the only,
Yeah.
like, why isn't that happening already? That just
Yeah.
seems like a no-brainer, because like from SEIU, 1021, right, to people who are working in trades
Right.
or whatnot.
And
You
there's
have
a big-
that's a big
yeah.
diversity of incomes, and it could pencil out. Why aren't we doing that? Why is that not
I
happening?
mean, I think that could work, and I think
I don't
it could
get it.
also work with with having the public bank in San Francisco, municipal bank, and then the other piece is.
Ooh, I want to talk
The
about
other
that
piece
too.
about
Yeah.
that is, and I'm sorry, I only have
Yeah, okay,
6
yeah.
o'clock because my kids are home.
Sure,
alone.
sure.
The other piece is we refinance all the outstanding debt for the city, and the bonds and stuff like that. A lot of them have been very bad loans, and so there's been movements in a lot of places to change the debt structure and end up having a better deal for the city, and then we end up putting a lot more money into our general fund.
Is
and then
most of it
that
right
money
now
we can
in
use for
Bank of
affordable
America?
housing.
Is that where we're keeping our? Is that
I think there's a huge chunk in Wells Fargo as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just went to a conference yesterday where we were talking about municipal bank, and I was wondering where John Avalos was with that, because I know he, back in Occupy SF,
Yeah.
he was talking about it then,
Yeah.
and I haven't heard anything come to the surface recently about that. But I think we really need to take control of our financing
Yeah.
of new development, and then the other piece is, I'll just throw this in right at the end, is there's one place in Sacramento that does prefab, building of units.
Uh-huh.
And so I think that maybe San Francisco isn't the place to be doing it because our space doesn't allow for it, but we're thinking regionally now. So where are there a couple places throughout the Bay Area, maybe San Jose, maybe in Oakland, Richmond, where we're actually creating state-of-the-art prefab units that then we can, I just saw, something in Australia where they're able to put up a 9-story building in 5 days on site, and it has water, great
Right.
water recapture, reuse, solar, water heating, all that stuff. So it's really exciting, but we should be doing that. We should be creating that
The
stuff
Leavenworth
somewhere,
Turk
right?
project was prefab, but TNDC got it continued till July. So there are, that was going to be our first prefab project.
But we should be creating jobs somewhere in
also,
the Bay Area to create those.
The Habitat for Humanity's model is kind of prefab, I think, and they're doing a multiple unit in Ocean, off of Ocean, or maybe even on Ocean.
Yeah.
They're building an apartment complex.
Oh, and it's going to be prefab?
I think it's prefab, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So this was
I
a great
think all this stuff
conversation.
is because it's all like sweat equity and stuff.
So the idea was to get together and do this again in front of a group of people.
Okay.
And have open up dialogue, and then at the end of it, my goal was always like, what do we want to do?
Yeah, what
and
can
so
people do in their neighborhoods for legalized homeless type stuff?
So, I mean, one of the things is, if they have space or they can let people stay, make it clear through signage or something like that, dealing with the police, talking to the police about, instead of stop calling the police to complain
Yeah.
when homeless people are present, that would be one thing.
Because that's something there's wide agreement on my list. Is that people should be able to live in their cars, just generalized legalized homeless stuff. Nobody on my list likes bylaws really.
Yeah.
We all think that that's.
yeah, and that's a great overlap.
Yeah, because that has nothing to do with not building. There's nothing actually fundamentally incoherent about easy building and letting people sleep anywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas-
Obviously, there's a lot of people opposed to letting people sleep anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why it isn't happening, but
Yeah.
that's-
As opposed to the ladies,
Yeah.
that lady on the Sunset who's I need your backyard to be open space. That
Yeah.
is fundamentally opposed with building something in the backyard. You know
right,
what I mean?
right, yeah,
that's
yeah.
But there's all
But that
kinds of
same
stuff
woman
like
may
that.
not want a car camper out in front of her
No,
house,
she
right?
definitely
Yeah.
doesn't.
Yeah.
So in terms of meeting together and inviting your group and our groups to come
Okay.
and be part of this, does the end of June work? Did you have a
So
space?
can we? This is okay. So June 16th, the Young Democrats is having some party, and then the end of June we're having our first fundraiser, the 26th, and then the
So
20
maybe July would
Yeah,
be
I
better?
think July.
July would be better for
Yeah,
me.
okay.
Okay, great.
But what is the commitment here? Are you saying our group's getting together? That means we're doing outreach to get people to come?
You don't have
or
to.
you already have?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
all right, I'm just trying.
Yeah, you could just show up,
Okay.
and then it could be, Sonia has a list.
I mean,
I
we're
have a
welcome to
list of
put
people.
stuff up or whatever.
Because
but
I
it's
have,
just
neighbors developing to visit area. I could send it to my list
Uh-huh.
of 900 people. So we could get people to show up. I think people want to talk about this.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
And-
think it would be cool, especially because we do a lot of okay, here's how you in your neighborhood get some not exactly get something built, but here's how you show up at meetings so that when your neighbors are I hate this thing, you can be no, I think it's a good idea. But we don't. I mean, we've never done anything what can you do in your neighborhood for legalized homeless, or what can you do for tenant protection? I mean, we really do have a lot of tenants on the list. That's the whole point.
Or let's take control of our financing and construction because the current system doesn't work. And that's more of a
Yeah, but-
structural paradigm shift type of thing. But I'm ready for that personally. Yeah.
Oh yeah, so also 322. So actually, I already asked you about this. This Seawall Lot 322. The mayor's office is all ready to go with 55% and below affordable housing,
Uh-huh.
and the neighbors are bitching.
Uh-huh.
And so that's something that's
Where is this 322?
It's Front and Broadway. There's parking lots.
And they're
there.
upset about it because
They
of
want
the
middle
class
income
issues.
housing. Yep.
And your thoughts
And
about
they're
that
just-
obviously are
Yeah, I mean,
that's-
they're just scared of poor people. They don't. Yeah.
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 But yeah,
So that's
And
something
they'll
we
probably
could unite on.
Not even notice.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would. What are they going to even write? Exactly. How
Yeah.
are they going to even know the difference? But that one's frustrating. I'm I'm going to talk to the lady at the mayor's office about it soon, because that is something that's the mayor's office had the RFP in hand, ready to issue it,
Uh-huh.
and then the neighbors were no, wait, how about a design charrette? And so
Oh,
now
so they're
this
just
is
stalling the process.
Yeah, and now it can't go forward till after the election because it's in District 3.
Uh-huh.
And Julie
Oh, I
Christensen
see.
isn't going to antagonize those neighbors now, because if she wins, it'll be by 30 votes. And I'm just
Yeah, she's not gonna win.
ugh. But
Interesting.
She's gonna be short term.